Meanwhile, the Bank of England is facing increased pressure to hand Venezuela's assets to National Assembly President Juan Guaido. In a press conference at the White House, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said that $1.2 billion worth of gold could be available to Guaido after President Nicolas Maduro was blocked from the account. Now, according to The Guardian, Guaido has even written to Prime Minister Theresa May asking for the funds. The Bank of England says their vaults hold over 400,000 bars of gold, or at least 165,000 fine troy ounces. To break it down, we turn to co-founder of Democracy at Work and professor of economics and international affairs, Richard Wolff. Thanks for joining us, Professor.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so what do you make of the Bank of England withholding $1.2 billion in gold from Maduro, but being urged to release the gold to Guaido from outside countries?
Well, there's two things. One, it makes a mockery of every international agreement that we know of about non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. We in the United States are busily going through a multi-year program to see whether the Russians had some role in the United States, nothing remotely like what the United States and perhaps now Britain are doing inside of Venezuela, openly and much more aggressively than anything we claim to be able to tolerate. It is extraordinary. The second thing is that the collapse of Britain as a global power, which is accelerated by Brexit, is now about to take, if these headlines are correct, another step. One of the few things left for Britain is to be the financial center that London has been for so long. And one of the ways you stay a financial center is if you don't play games with other people's money. It is for the Venezuelans who put the money into the care of the British bank to determine what is done with it. It is not for the Bank of England to pick who it's going to give money to that comes from another society. That has to be worked out in the other society. And you can be sure that every government in the world is going to rethink putting any money in London as they used to do when they're watching this political manipulation with the money they entrust to the British. It is very dangerous for the world, but for Britain particularly.
Absolutely, and that's the question right now. How many countries that you know of, and obviously if Venezuela has money in the Bank of England, I look at Bank of England kind of being like the Switzerland, where they just stayed out of everything, but just went along with the rules. Now you're looking at them actually allowing political pressure to make them make policy decisions. Does this not compromise us going forward, knowing that there's nowhere else for countries to kind of look at where they can put their money in and trust that it will be kept safe?
Well, what the British are showing is that the decline of Europe, like the decline of the United States, like the trouble in Venezuela, is changing the rules of the game. They're not playing the way they have for 200 years in London. It's an index of how severe the problems of capitalism in that country are. They can't continue, apparently, to be the neutral place where you can safely put your money, as many, many countries do. They seem to be under the thumb of the United States, and who is telling them what to do in this Venezuela. All the initiative is taken by the United States, and that is a signal to every other country that has or may have difficulties with the United States that they better get their money out of England, out of London, because that's not a safe place as it once was.
Well, this is Brexit by a different definition. Last question that I have to ask you is, why is the United States doing this from a financial standpoint? What do we have that benefits us going forward? Or is this simply just about trying to help the people on the ground in Venezuela, as the government, the American government, keeps saying it is?
Well, the American government has a long record of not caring very much what happens to the mass of the Venezuelan people. To believe that suddenly a regime of the sort of Mr. Trump has its heart beating for the average Venezuelan poor people stretches credulity beyond anything that a reasonable person should believe. There are two things going on. One, control of Venezuela's oil, which has always been an urgent issue for the United States. And number two is to remove from Venezuela a government that sympathizes with Cuba, that sympathizes with revolutionary and critical social movements all over Latin America, to withdraw one of their helpers, the Venezuelans. That's why we tried to get rid of, as a nation, Mr. Chavez before, and that's why what's going on now is unfolding. It's the same old imperialism, just updated for the 21st century.
Do we have any guarantee in the United States that if Guaido was put into power, that he's actually going to be an ally and a friend to the U.S.?
Well, he will be dependent on the United States. It's the power of the United States economically and politically that is the trouble for Mr. Chavez, was and is the trouble for Mr. Maduro. It will be a constraint on whoever comes next. This guy, as a representative of the rich who have been inconvenienced by the last 20 years of Venezuelan history, they want to undo all that was done. And the prospects for what that's going to do to Venezuela are horrific, because once the U.S. has the oil, the rest will be as inconsequential for American policy now as it has been for the last 200 years.
Always insightful. Thank you so much, Professor Wolf, for joining us on this important subject.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.